Well, we have more Cisco products that we need to talk about, and this particular part we're going to be talking about the wireless LAN adapters that Cisco produce. So the first product is the Cisco Card Bus, very old form factor. It supports radios A, B, and G. So the PCI adapter, supports a single radio, dual radio, or tri-radio A, B, and G. Older product, but still supported. If you have Windows 7, you're going to find that this does not support Windows 7. So it's really for deployment of older equipment that you still find out there. And you can see that the antenna and the card have a 2-foot cable between them, and so it allows you to install this into perhaps a desktop computer and then run the antenna up to your desk or the top of your display. This is another wireless LAN adapter card, here conforming to 802.11a, and it operates in the Uni 1 and the Uni 2 bands only. So now we get to talk about the Cisco wireless LAN controllers. Now, wireless controllers can be a separate device, i.e. an appliance, or it can be a module, that's integrated into a switch or a router. When you're looking at the different wireless LAN controllers, the big difference between them is the number of access points that they can support. And access points are license-based, so you'll start off with a base license and then you can add licenses to it in order to support more and more access points. So you have two decisions really to make: is what do you think your growth is going to be on the access controller, and then how many access points do you need to support today versus where you think you'll be in a few years. And so bear that in mind as we step through the different models. So the first access controller I want to show you is the 2100. So this is the older entry-level product. It comes in 3 models: the 2106, the 2112, the 2125, and they support 6, 12, or 25 access points respectively. The reason I want to show you this, even though it's end of life, is that we will be using it in our labs. And so I wanted to give you some visibility to it. It does have 8 ports, 2 of which are PoE. But in our labs we're going to put all the traffic through port 1. And the reason is that you cannot use lag, you cannot aggregate, do link aggregation on those 8 ports on this particular model. Now our next one here is the 2500 series, and this is the one that I would so like in my home office. It's meant for smaller entry-level kind of environments, really replacing the 2100. So small medium enterprises, branch locations, goes from 5 to 50 access points. This one has 4 gigabit per second ports on it versus the 2100, which had 100 megabyte ports on it, and 1 gigabit Ethernet port, which of course goes up to 1 gigabit per second. I think the notable thing here is it's fairly small. It weighs about 3.5 pounds, and the dimensions are about 8 inches by almost 7 inches, and is less than 2 inches thick. So it's a very small, nice standalone controller. So now the 5500 series wireless LAN controller. This one you can go up to 250 access points, compared with the previous access point when it went up to 50. This wireless LAN controller supports up to 500 access points, whereas the previous access controller supported up to 50 access points only. So obviously meant for much larger networks. Now this access point not only supports the Clean Air but also the Office Extend, and so it will set up secure tunnels to branch or home locations that may have something like the access point 600 or the 1130 or the 1140 And remember, we talked about that earlier, about how you can extend your policies then down to those locations. Has 8 gigabit Ethernet ports, and like the 2500 we were just looking at, the communications between the client and the wireless LAN controller that's supported is CAT-WAP. So the Cisco Wireless Service Module 2 is really for mission-critical high-performance enterprise environments. This controller is deployed on the Catalyst 6500 series switch, which means it's typically suited for mid to large size enterprises. It can support up to 1,000 access points, but typically you don't want to put more than 500 on this access point, and hence why it's got a 500 AP base license. And the reason is that you can only update 500 access points at once. So even though it has the connection capability, the functional capability of managing the access points really leaves you to 500. So if ever you hear 1,000 and then 500, it's a matter of, yes, you can connect 1,000, but 500 is really what you can manage. Notice the size of the licenses are based in hundreds and 200s, so not as flexible as the other options in terms of growth. But again, this is meant to be for a larger deployment. So now we have the service ready engine, and you can see from the pictures that it's kind of like this pluggable interface form factor that goes into Cisco's ISR G2 routers. So therefore they're effectively blades that provide the capability to then host applications, hence the name Application on a Service Ready Engine. Each module has its own processor, storage, memory, etc. And its main purpose here is to provide the functionality while reducing the footprint and also the power consumption. And you can see here it comes in 2 form factors. The internal module, the ISM, and then the service module. And so the service module is the one on the right in this picture, and the internal services module is on the left. The different modules can have different processors, different memory, and some of them have hard drives and one of them doesn't. So depending on your requirements, you would choose a different model. The number of supported access points is fairly small, and that's because this is typically deployed to simplify hardware when you're out at a branch or a small remote location. So there's not normally at that location many access points that it's looking to support. So now we get to talk about the Cisco wireless control system. So we talked about all the access points, the wireless LAN adapters, the wireless LAN controllers, and now how do we manage all of that environment? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this part, wireless control system. So the first thing to note is that this system runs on Windows Server 2003 or Linux Red Hat. So it does not run on Windows Server 2008 or 2012. When you're looking to buy this product, you really want to check out the licensing. There's several aspects to it, but one of the things to look for is that you would get a different license if you're running it on a single server versus multiple servers. So the picture on the right shows a configuration with access points showing what's been deployed, where they're deployed, what the coverage is, whether it's good enough for voice, data, location services, etc. So one of the big things about the wireless control system is it does help you plan out your wireless LAN, manage the configuration and your assets. Coupled with that, it will help you troubleshoot any problems with the wireless network, track your assets through location-based services, monitoring security, rogue access points, etc. The picture on the left then shows the manageability aspect, shows what utilization the wireless network is at, what the performance is, are there any alerts. And it will help you manage lightweight access points, wireless LAN controllers, and also the mobility service engine, which we haven't talked about quite yet. It's important that you understand what the hardware requirements are, and it does depend on the number of access points that you're trying to support and the number of wireless LAN controllers. And so here you can see is 3 models of servers, a low end, a standard, and the high end. How they're varying is the capability to support more and more access points, more and more wireless LAN controllers. So a low end server, a 3.06 gigahertz CPU, 2 gig of RAM with 5 gig of hard disk drive space. If you go up to the standard model, you'll see the number of access points supported goes from 500 to 2,000 if they're lightweight, just 1,000 if they're autonomous mode, and it takes the wireless LAN controllers from 125 to 450. As you'd expect, you need a bigger processor to manage that. For the now, you're looking at the dual core CPU. Additional memory, 4 GB of memory and 8 GB of hard drive. And then the high-end server here now going up to 3,000 lightweight access points and 750 wireless LAN controllers. And here now you're looking at a quad-core CPU with significantly more hard drive. So I talked earlier about some of the functionality, but I want to focus in on a few of them. The planning capabilities. When you're actually planning out your wireless network, you can actually go in and install a site map, insert some outer walls, and the system can automatically generate a heat map based on the type of Cisco access points and Cisco antennas that you plan to use. You can then tweak that a little bit, and you can use that then when you go out and do your site survey. Now, it's not really meant to be a site survey tool, but it's very good if you can't afford a site survey tool. But it's not as flexible as a full site survey and planning tool. A full site survey planning tool would allow you to put in obstacles, wall construction, etc. So it goes a long way towards helping you plan out your network. And if you can't afford a more expensive tool, this will certainly get you going in the right direction. What I like about this product is that once you've planned it out in your network and you've used it for site survey, once the stuff is installed, you can use that same plan, same modeling to then take a look at your real life network. It has monitoring capabilities as you'd expect with any network management tool, so is able to detect things happening in the network such as rogue access points. And that's fed back from the clients, and the management system, WCS, will then raise the appropriate alarms, etc. And again, you can modify all of that depending on what it is that warrants in your environment a critical alarm, etc. It also helps your troubleshooting because it does incorporate the clean air technology, in the sense that that information is collected at the access point but is analyzed in the network, and the wireless control system is the one that's going to report back on that analysis. It not only reports on access points and wireless LAN controller, but it also reports on the wireless clients as well that are connected to the access point. And there's a range of tools to help you resolve those issues. So for instance, if a client is having a roaming problem, it can help analyze what is actually happening and say, okay, if we change these parameters, then maybe we can fix those problems. The tool is also accessible via the web GUI, and that's what you saw in the previous pictures. Now, I think this is a really important chart to understand, and I took it from the Cisco website. And again, always check, because licensing rules do change, so always make sure you download the latest licensing and ordering guide, and that's true for any products, not just the wireless control system. When ordering it, you want to make sure you've got the right SKU, i.e. you order the base, the plus, single server licenses, or you order the Plus Enterprise multiple server licensing. You can see here the single server supports up to 500 access points, and if you look at the Plus offering compared with the base offering, you'll see that the Plus has a lot more additional capabilities, such as context-aware, mobility service management, etc. You can see the Enterprise then supports licensing up to 50,000 across multiple servers. In terms of the additional features, you'll see that they are effectively the same as what you get on the single server Plus. And so again, it's just the transition to a multi-server environment. So a couple of key terms that you should be familiar with. Eranet. Eranet is a term you often hear related to the Cisco equipment, and it really relates back to a company that Cisco acquired that got them into the wireless LAN market, and so often the evolution of those products sometimes is still referred to as Eranet. Wireless mesh network. These are simply where you take your wireless devices and interconnect them in a mesh networking topology. In the Cisco deployment, those would normally be access points that you're then connecting, forming this mesh interconnectivity between those mesh nodes. Thank you for listening.